Dice Tower People's Choice Top 100 Games of All Time. Dice Tower People's Choice Top 100 Games of All Time.
And we're back.
All right.
All right. We've gone through the first 10. Now we're in the second 10. I guess I don't know what that means. Nothing. Or the people like the games better. We've got a few comments where people said, "Why are you criticizing the People's Choice? You know, blah 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 blah." Well, I mean, otherwise the show would be really boring. I would just read you the names of the games.
This is next. Then this one.
So while. But at the same time, even if I criticize choice of games, which we might, it's if you love those games, that's fantastic. It doesn't mean I think any less of you. If you like, let's say, for example, Flux didn't make the list, which is sad. But I'm not a big fan of Flux. In other words, I hate it. But if you love Flux, fantastic.
Right.
We're glad you like Flux. I mean, why would I be upset at you for liking a different game than me? Just don't ask me to play. But if you want to play, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think we're invalidating the list by saying, oh, this game we personally don't like. We're just, saying what we're thinking of it, but we're also attempting to figure out why it might be on the list at all. You know, what the consensus seems to be.
Well, that's enough of us being nice. Let's be mean.
Let's rip some games apart.
Here we go.
Number 90, Battle.
I have to say that this game here really surprised me that it was on the list, Battle Lore. Not because I think it's a bad game, I just figured the enthusiasm for it had died down considerably.
And it's very out of print. It's very hard to get.
Yeah, I mean, what happened was Days of Wonder made this, I think 6 years ago or 5 years ago, and they said this was the culmination of everything that they wanted to do. They made this big fantasy game based on the Memoir 44 system, but they added magic and all kinds of cool things.
Yes.
With the promise of these really cool expansions. Then they started producing expansions which were a little pricey and didn't really add a ton of stuff to the game. Each one added a few things. And then eventually they sold the whole thing to Fantasy Flight, which made a bunch of expansions which it really seemed like they had already been designed by Days of Wonder,
Right.
and Fantasy Flight had bought them.
Well, and Fantasy Flight decided they were not going to reprint the base because it would be too costly to do so.
And so they made their own game, Battle Lore, Battle of Westeros, which was it's similar but different at the same time. So I think this is a done game.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can't enjoy it.
Absolutely. And I do think that, in my opinion, of all the games that use this commands and colors CNC system, this is my favorite of all of those. Just because it seems to have the most flavor. It's the most captivating to me.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not mine, but my biggest detractor from this is all the pieces are the same color. It drives me nuts.
Right.
I wish there was a way to fix that so that you could instantly look at the board and see what was where. But
Called paint, Tom.
yeah, I know, but I'm not painting all these pieces. Did you paint yours?
No.
Okay. Well, anyhow, surprising it's still on the list. Last year, it was also on the list, so, hey, people still like it. Battle Lore.
Number 89, Battle.
A very similar name.
Battle Line.
Battle Line, not Battle Lore, and a somewhat smaller and cheaper game. Interesting enough, this game is produced by GMT Games, and they're known for war games. And this is a war game. Not.
Not really.
This is a two-player card player game, which is essentially, it could have been put into the Cosmos two-player line. Don't you think? It's exactly like that.
Absolutely.
A lot of people compare this to Lost Cities by Reiner Knizia. He designed both games, and it's not really, but there's a few similarities. In my opinion, this one has a little bit more strategy.
Oh, I think so too. And it's definitely easier to play, in my opinion, with the math being reduced by quite a bit. It's simpler to get into, simpler to explain.
This game has a very kind of tenseness as the game progresses because you're holding on the cards, you're not knowing when to play it, because if the faster you play cards, the more you reveal what you're trying to do.
Yes.
Am I trying to get three of a kind at a spot? Am I trying to get all the same color?
Right.
Because once you reveal what you do, your opponent will say, I can beat that. Or at least you think so.
And they can wait. They can wait you out as well. You're hoping to wait out the opponent get that card, that one specific card you need to take them out.
Do you like the special cards in here?
I've used them a couple of times, but they do add a twist of chaos that the people who I think are big fans of the game usually like to play without. But hey, it never hurts to have special cards in the game, especially optional ones.
Alrighty, that's Battle Line.
Number 88, Formula D.
Now we have another one that actually went up. Last year this was 97. Now it's gone up to 88.
Wow.
Now, in this one, I combined the votes for Formula Day and Formula D both years because they're essentially the same game. I mean, Asmodee put out a much better production of this. It's one of the nicest productions there is.
Oh, yes.
And they added extra rules that you can use or not use. You know, street racing rules, and they're doing a good job at this point by releasing all these new maps. Plus, you can use all the old maps for Formula Day. So, I think this one's on there just because it's so popular. It's such an easy game to get into.
Right, it's a great game, plays a crowd very easily, and I think they have kept interest up with those maps. They keep putting out these maps, and people are loving them. So the game's a very good racing game.
Right, and there's people who have tournaments of this game. They're running it with a different dice. I mean, I stink at this game, mostly because I always push my luck. I'm pretty sure I can hit that corner, even though I have a 1 out of 10 chance of doing it.
Boom. I think I understand why it's still on the list, and I am glad to see it on the list. This is a great racing game.
Formula D or Day? Or, yeah, D. Day.
Number 87, Age of Empires 3.
This is a fairly hefty game, Age of Empires 3, or nowadays it's called Empires Age of Discovery, because they lost the license to use Age of Empires, which is fine because it really didn't have anything to do with Age of Empires anyway.
It was so confusing, too. Age of Empires 3, and you're thinking, okay, this is the third game in a line of board games? What's going on? It's
Nope.
very confusing, yeah.
This was one of the first worker placement games that I've ever played. There's a million of them now. But this was one of the first ones I played, and I was eager to play it, not because it was a worker placement game, but because it was a Eagle game at the time, and Eagle games were just these massive, plasticky goodness type games. I'm actually kind of surprised that it's still on the list. It was on the list last year also, because it's essentially out of print at this point, although they did release an expansion for it last year.
Right.
In fact, I do know that there is thoughts of reprinting it. I'd be curious to know who would be interested in a reprint of this game. But all that being said, what do you think?
I think it's a good game. It's a great game. And you're right, it was one of the early worker placement games, and I think the theme definitely helped it. The theme of this stood out from the crowd of worker placement games where you're building a castle and you grow a moat or some crazy thing like that. This had that great flavor of conquering the land and kind of making your move on the
Right, the different pieces made sense. You put a missionary down, and he went over and then would convert someone, and you would have two people of your people. You put a soldier down, he would go over, and he would fight. That was the point of soldiers.
It had a nice thematic flavor that tied into those European mechanics. Yeah, absolutely. So I could understand this being on the list.
Do get the expansion if you like the game and don't have it. The expansion adds just a little, but a lot at the same time. Adds some special abilities for each person, and adds more buildings, and adds another player, I think. Well, whatever. There's a lot of cool stuff.
Number 86, Betrayal on the House of the Hill.
Betrayal at House on the Hill. This is the reprint of the game, and I have to say, if I was making a list of reprints in history of games, this might be in the bottom 5. Not because it's a bad reprint, it's because there was so many problems with the original game.
Right.
And it's like they didn't bother trying to fix any of them.
Fixed them.
But I opened up, I said, okay, wow, it's a new box. This one's green, the old one was red. And then I looked at all the pieces and I said, they're all the same.
Yeah, it feels
Nothing
like
changed.
It feels like they had leftover material that never ended up in a box. And they're like, okay, well, let's reprint it, change the lid, and sell it again.
Okay. But the game itself, I'm really surprised it's on the list, because with all the Fantasy Flight horror stuff out there, this game is still there. When I'm going to be honest, I enjoy playing this, but it's not a good game. I enjoy it though, because the theme is so pervasive.
Right.
You know, it's like every B horror movie ever combined into one box. But basically, you're just turning a tile over and seeing what happens.
Sure. I'm not surprised it's on the list myself, actually. I think it's the crowd that would enjoy this game and play the heck out of this game is not necessarily the crowd that's going to get into a massive Fantasy Flight game. The game is funny. Like you said, you flip a tile and see what happens, but that elicits laughter. You got a good crowd going. People are enjoying themselves. So I don't see those two really competing. This is much more a family-style game.
Right. Yeah. No, and it works. I mean, I've played it in the past before where we've turned the lights down low and played horror music, and it's just silly fun.
It is.
And the fact that there's 50 different scenarios means you likely very rarely play the same one twice. And if you do, then we just say, hey, let's roll again and see what happens. It's cool.
But you have to be ready to know that the game is a little kludgy with the rules. You have to be ready to make house rulings on it at any given moment, and know that you're getting into a light, silly game, or it should be.
Right.
Number 85, Belfort.
I don't actually have a copy of Belfort with me here because it was just edged out in my collection by some very similar games. Belfort is a very beautiful game, and some people love it a lot, which is definitely why it's on the list. It's a new addition to the list. It's a worker placement game with elves and dwarves and gnomes, and you're building a city together, and has some very neat interaction and also some variety from game to game. I'm pretty sure it's on the list because the people who like Belfort love it. Mm-hmm. Many people said, oh, it should be Game of the Year, and I thought, really? I mean, I thought it was a good game, but Game of the Year, but there's just some people, as soon as they play it, just fall completely in love with it.
Well, it's not one I've played, so I can't really speak to it, but would you say it's a thematic game? Because you did say elves and goblins.
Yeah, there's some thematic, but there's some weird theming to it. Like, you can get like a special thing that makes your dwarf drink more, which makes him work harder.
Okay.
Which seems a little off. We call them super dwarfs. Like, the super dwarf is coming in, he's mining more. But or drunk super dwarf, I don't know. Yeah, the building, I mean, it was, I would say on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being totally immersive, like Betrayal, which we just saw.
Right.
This one would be like a 6.
Okay.
Which means it's closer to that end. So, but it's a gorgeous looking game. So, Belfort.
Number 84, Coconut.
Excuse me, I'll be right back. This is Crokinole. Crokinole. Well, I'm not pulling it out of the box because that's too much work.
Come on!
All right, hang on. Well, there might be a lizard in here. So Crokinole, we know why that's popular because you can take it to pretty much any convention and play it, very easily. Have you played it before?
I have.
I always get a kick out of the fact that there's a 2-cheek rule in the game.
This is just fascinating to watch. There it is.
Crokinole. Now this is the Mayday version, which even though I like Mayday, this is most certainly the cheapest version in existence, both in quality and in price, and that's fine because I'm happy with cheap quality. But there are people out there who, and they bring their things in pewter boxes, and
Well, it's functional. No one's saying it's not functional. And the one I've played with is not that one, obviously, but it's a similar quality one, and it plays just fine. There's no issue with it.
All right.
But it's a very fun every
Yep, and every it's certainly a convention game, I think.
Oh yeah, it's a party game. It's really light. Flick the discs, try to get them in there, and but it definitely gets a crowd gathered around,
Right. So I'm glad I have a board, but I just have to. It's a bit of a pain to store.
Put it up on the wall.
Carry.
A lot of people do that.
Well, some people that actually Mayday Games had talked for a while about making a clock piece to stick in the middle, so you could put it up on the wall, and it was your clock.
Oh, wow.
And then you take that off. That would be a neat concept, I think. Although I'm afraid that it might be taking it down and off and the clock piece in and out. If I put a clock in it, it would be a clock forever, I think.
Right.
So, an expensive clock too. All right, Crokinole.
Number 83, Pillars of the Earth.
Pillars of the Earth. Another worker placement game, and I'm really glad to see this one on the list. Sometimes people think that Mayfair is a company that makes Settlers of Catan and really nothing else.
Right.
And I always like to tout this as a game they made that's really good. It's based on the book, and I've never read the book.
Nope.
But it's a pretty game, and it's one of the worker placement games that I think really fits the theme. As you were asking about Belfort, this one I would put up almost as a 7 or 8, because here your workers are gathering this, they're building this, they're going over here. It makes sense.
I would agree, and this is a great game. This is probably, if not my favorite worker placement game, one of my favorites, for sure. And like you said, I haven't read the book either, but I do hear that it ties into that theme very well. And it's just a gorgeous game to look at and to play. It just flows beautifully. It's got a lot of Euro mechanics, but everything makes sense. Everything ties in very well, and I'm really happy to see it on the list.
All right. Pillars of the Earth.
Number 82. Tales of Arabian Nights.
Now this makes me sad for 2 reasons. One reason is that there's not more games out like this, although there's the promise of more. Agents of Smersh just came out, which is similar to this, and I hear there's a King Arthur and his Knights one and stuff like that. That'd be cool. The second thing that saddens me is that Z has not played this. Shame on you, for someone who loves theme. That's all that's in this game.
That's true. I haven't played yet.
This has been on the list for 2 years. It's gone down a bit here. Let's see, last year, what was it at? 57, now it's at 82. But it's one of those games that you love or hate. Some people hate it because they're like, I had no control. Any choice I made didn't really matter. Yeah, but the story's so good. The writing is so well done, and it's hilarious what will happen to you. You meet the beggar, you befriend him, he robs you. You meet the beggar, you beat him, something that I would recommend not doing, and yet you find out he was really a thief in disguise, and it was a good idea. You never know. You don't know what's going to happen in any given situation, and to me, that's hilarious. And I like the Arabian Nights theme. This is, in my opinion, one of the most underused themes in gaming.
Oh, yes.
Why isn't there like 10 more games about this? But instead, it's more important that we build a castle in France in 1500.
Well, I think that the desert, if you would, theme is used plenty, just not tied into the Arabian Nights.
Right. There's plenty of desert. They take the most boring thing about Arabian Nights. Let's see what we can do. Take out the exciting stories.
Where is there nothing? The desert. Let's do it there.
All right. So anyway, Tales of Arabian Nights.
Number 81. Aura and Abora.
Our final game on this list is a new one. One of Z's favorites. Aura and Labora.
Why, people? Why?
I'll tell you why. I think this is a good game. I like it, as it comes to worker placement and all that. But the thing is, as much as I like this, there are other games that are similar, like Trajan, and those didn't make the list. Mm-hmm. So why did Aura and Labora make the list when those games that are similar to it did not? And I'm telling you, it's making it on strength of Agricola and Le Havre alone, on strength of the Rosenberg name. That doesn't mean this is a bad game. It's quite a good one. In fact, we got a few people in our group who think this is the bee's knees.
Right.
And I like it. Obviously, it's still on my shelf. It's good. I think it's my third favorite of that series. I like Agricola and Le Havre better. This isn't in my top 100. But hey, I seriously think it's because of the name recognition.
It is, and I understand why people like it as well. It's the mechanics, the idea of how the game all ties together is very strong. I could see people having this one game and playing just this one game for a long time.
That's true. Right. I'm not trying to take away from the game. Right. I'm just thinking it's at number 81.
Oh, I agree with you absolutely.
Because of Rosenberg's name.
That it is coasting on his name. It is coasting on Agricola recognition and Le Havre recognition.
Like, for example, Trajan Village and Troyes. Mm-hmm. Those are similar games that came out at the same time. They're 105, 106, 107 on my list here. How sad. But the fact is that this one, I think, shot up 20 rankings because of that.
And I think and I do think this one will have more staying power. I would not be surprised to see it on the list again next year. Whereas those other ones, I think, will continue to drop.
And this one doesn't have cubes. It actually has little wooden different pieces. And as people laugh at me when I say that, but I really think that helps the game out when you can visualize what you're doing. So anyway, that's Aura and Labora. That's it for this day. Come back in a few days and we'll talk about 10 more. We are now done with 20% of the list. Whew. Can you believe that? I can't believe this game's on the list. Wait till you see our next one. There's a game on there that doesn't belong.
Games of all time.
See you next time.
Dice Tower People's Choice Top 100 Games of All Time.
Age of Empires 3.
Number 87, Age of Vampires Greed.
No. No, it's Age of Empires, not Vampires. Age of Empires 3. Number 87, Age of Empires 3.
Number 87, Age of Empires Greed.
Not greed. 3.
Oh.
A number, okay? Although that's not really that far off. Okay. Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Number 86, Betrayal of the House on the Rail.
On the Hill. On the
Okay.
hill. Okay.